The White Pill is available now at whitepillbook.com. This episode is brought to you by Patriot Gold. Good afternoon, Michael Malice here. Let that be your welcome for the next hour. We have with us a very special guest, Cenk Uygur, head of the Young Turks. His new book, I want to get the title exactly right, is out now. Justice is Coming, How Progressives Are Going to Take Over the Country, and America is Going to Love It. Cenk, I know you've been writing this book for a very long time. And as someone who's an author myself, I know it's always glacial, bamboo under the fingernails process. What finally got you around to, getting this resolved and out?
Yeah. So basically, I run the TYT network. I'm the founder and CEO, and I host our flagship show, The Young Turks.
Right.
And I've got 2 young kids. So it was just a matter of attrition, like just getting through it, moving to the next trench and the next trench. But I will tell you, there were parts of the process where I had to get over mental hurdles. And one of them was having an establishment person, a New York Times book reviewer in my head. And I had to kick that person out of my head before I could continue writing. I wrote it for the audience. I wrote it for the average person, and some parts of the establishment will despise the book. And they're supposed to. It's for outsiders, and it's for progressives and populists that are looking to overthrow this system.
Yeah, when talking to conservatives, it's almost impossible to get them to view there being some distinction between establishment Democrats and progressives and democratic socialists. And they might have some kind of grudging confession that Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders aren't the same phenomenon. But if you push them, it's like, well, they're going to end up the same place anyway. And I don't think that's accurate, because Bernie Sanders would have never passed the Defense of Marriage Act, as a very easy example. Certainly, certainly in terms of foreign policy, I don't think their worldviews are analogous. How would you explain to people the difference between, say, progressivism and someone who is just a straight ticket Democratic voter?
I think it's very easy to explain to the average guy, to Republicans. Where it gets difficult is what I'll call mainstream Democrats who have grown up on mainstream media. That's where it gets the hardest. So to the average person, I would just say, look, super simple. Progressives are for all of the Democratic agenda you've heard of, that is for the average worker: higher minimum wage, paid family leave, child tax credit, and I can go on and on and on, right? And establishment Democrats, like Hillary Clinton, are for corporate rule. So they will do whatever their corporate donors tell them to do. The rest is all just theater put on by mainstream media to make you think that there's actually a debate, a free marketplace of ideas, et cetera, et cetera. But the media hates that kind of talk because they're the ones that put on the play. And so, unfortunately, media is overwhelmingly effective. And so if you watch MSNBC and CNN and read the New York Times and listen to NPR, you believe the play is real. So you think that Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden are doing the best they can. Golly gee, they just couldn't get anything done that they promised. But, oh, shucks, we'll do it next time. And that was the best they could do. Whereas progressives actually want to pass those bills and protect what I think are freedoms that the American people and the whole country was set up on. If I could just explain that, and a huge part of the point of Justice is Coming is explaining that to mainstream Democrats, then we could win in primaries, and then we would win in general elections super easy, in my opinion.
One of the craziest things I hear in right of center circles is this idea that Joe Biden is a communist. And it is, but and maybe they just mean it to mean outgroup, right? Like, roughly speaking. But the idea that Democrats like Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton, Joe Lieberman, and others at the DLC aren't in favor of a corporate run system where, big business is basically writing sending orders down to the people in Washington and having them have those orders filled, to me is bonkers. I mean, there's no part of Joe Biden that wants the government running most industries. That just seems just crazy to me. And a very obvious example, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts, is what the Biden administration just recently did about those strikers. This is the party of labor, blue collar Joe. And as soon as you have working class people who have some kind of leverage, and they're like, all right, like, let's get our share of the pie, here comes the state to make sure. He was just one step away from sending in the Pinkertons.
Yeah. So there are a couple different factions within the Democratic Party and even within progressives. So I think those are interesting topics. But this one is not a hard one. Like, Biden is I wouldn't even call him a capitalist. I think he's a corporatist,
Yes,
along with
exactly. Correct.
most establishment Democrats and most establishment Republicans. The great majority of Congress is corporatist because they take corporate donations, which I would call, and every rational person would call, a bribe. And if you're taking bribes from corporations, you're serving corporations and you're not serving the American people. By the way, you're also not serving capitalism, because capitalism is about free
Right.
markets and competition. It isn't about giving away the store to your donors. The Republicans invented that. They perfected it. But now the Democrats have copied them nearly perfectly. Democrats like Joe Biden. But the idea of calling him communist, I mean, why don't you tell me you know nothing about politics without telling me you know nothing about politics? Joe Biden despises communists, despises anything that isn't pro-corporate. And so we couldn't get him to move 15% to the left, let alone to communism. And I wouldn't want that anyway, because I'm not in that faction.
What was your reaction? And this is going to be a little bit of a throwback, when in 2016, Hillary Clinton got called out for being Wall Street's favorite senator. And her response is, well, they just thought I did a good job with 9/11.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah. Okay. So listen, you've picked two great examples. So let's stay on them. So Hillary Clinton got tons of campaign donations from Wall Street. Back when she was the first lady, she pushed Bill Clinton, her husband, to regulate Wall Street. Very specific topic. Okay. The same exact topic comes up when she's a senator, now funded by Wall Street. And she changes her position and is like, Wall Street doesn't need to be regulated. Now that they're bribing me, they don't need to be regulated at all, right? And then she goes, after she's senator, goes and gives paid speeches, directly money into her pocket, millions and millions of dollars, and then goes, no, they just want to know my pearls of wisdom. But sister, that's already out in the public. They know what you think. No, that is a bribe. Okay. Now, if you say that in Washington, heads explode. Oh, no, you're helping the Republicans. Well, look, you're not helping yourself if you're lying to everyone. Everyone knows that's a bribe. And so, and it's not like the Republicans don't take them. They take them in bucketfuls and bushelfuls, right? So you can criticize both easily. Now, I wanted to get back to also what you mentioned about Biden and the rail strike, right?
Yeah.
Now, you don't have to be a communist or socialist or democratic socialist to be in favor of the average American worker. Okay. I call myself a democratic capitalist, and I am very much in favor of the average American worker. And the framing is maddening from both the people and from the people who pretend that they are objective, right? Mainstream media and Joe Biden framed that as these workers, they could disrupt the entire American economy.
Good, yeah. Wait, hold on. If he's right, pay him more. If they're that important,
that's exactly my point. Michael, that's exactly my point. But wait a minute, why is it the workers? Why isn't it the companies? The companies give them 0 paid sick days off. So isn't it the company's fault? And especially if you're a Democratic president and you don't make that point and you help to smear the workers with it. Now, look, Biden on workers is complicated. I'm not saying there's no nuance. His National Labor Relations Board is pretty good. And after he did what we're talking about, he did push them. And eventually those companies did give a couple of sick days off to their workers. So I want to give the full nuanced picture of it. But overall, accepting the framing that it's the workers' fault and not the company's fault is disastrous. Definitely not socialism. That is basically corporatism.
I'm curious why you use the term mainstream media instead of my preferred term, the corporate press, because to me, I don't think they're mainstream at all. I think it kind of gives them more credit than deserve, because their whole goal is to basically have this top down, we're going to be the rulers and controllers of perceived public opinion, and we're going to form what becomes the mainstream. Whereas my preferred term, the corporate press, really I think speaks to people across the political spectrum to realize, wait a minute, this is an institution or series of institutions with an agenda. That agenda is sometimes positive, sometimes negative, but it certainly isn't, objective and value free.
So it's a great question, great point, and I have a very specific answer. So first of all, in the book, I explained that corporate media is not just what we colloquially call mainstream media; it's also right-wing media. Those are
Yes,
both
of course.
under the same exact umbrella. That is why you'll see they'll fight on culture wars 24/7. But the minute it's student debt relief or paid family leave or higher wages for the average American worker, all of a sudden MSNBC and CNN agree with Fox News exactly. Okay, so they never disagree on
Wait,
any of those economic
why
issues.
would you think corporate media doesn't include like Fox? Like where'd you get
Yeah.
that
So my
impression?
point is, corporate media
Yeah,
definitely
of
includes Fox.
course.
Okay. So I hear you, and that's your point, and it's a great point. So why do I use mainstream media from time to time? The reason is when you say corporate media for the normies, that signals to them, because they've been brainwashed by mainstream media into thinking, oh, that guy's a radical. That guy's a radical, probably a communist or something.
Oh, I mean the speaker, like you're the radical, like if you use that term.
Yeah, if you use
Okay.
corporate media for a lot of the normies, because they've been trained into
Okay.
thinking that corporatism is ridiculous, no such thing exists. We don't live under corporate rule. Everything is great. Everything is fine. The status quo is beautiful. Corporate media, that sounds like a conspiracy theory. No. So that's why I'm saying, and by the way, when I say mainstream media, the right wing knows exactly what I'm talking about. And then I say to them, now, brothers and sisters, you don't think Fox News is part of that same media ecosystem that's trying to drive us apart, but help corporations? You don't see that every time there's tax cuts for the rich, Fox News loves it. Tax cuts and deregulation for corporations that are crushing you, Fox News loves it. So I'm trying to bring people into the tent of rationality through different methods.
Yeah, so I started reading your book, and one of the things that you bring up a lot in the first chapter is Fox News. I think you mentioned them like a dozen times. I'm curious to hear your thoughts as to how prevalent you still think Fox News is in terms of forming right of center public opinion, especially after the exodus of Tucker, who I would say is probably by far the most radical person that they had on their roster, certainly in terms of being anti-corporate in any sense.
Yeah, Michael, I think that we're in a situation where the media is in a gigantic flux. Okay.
Yes, yeah,
And so the Fox News flux is a little bit different than the CNN one, for example, and
sure.
different than the MSNBC one. So in Fox News, they used to be straight party line. Republicans are awesome. Conservative policies are awesome. Every Republican candidate is God's gift to humanity. Every Democrat's the Satan, maybe literally. And so now it's bifurcated, and it's Trump
Yeah,
versus the establishment. And Fox News has historically been the establishment. But what they did was they're running the same con, but in different degrees, and that makes a giant difference. So the con that Fox News ran for a long time is, we're populist, we're for the average American, we're for Kansas, we're for the workers. Now let's give everything to corporations, right? So
right.
now Trump took that scam and put it on steroids. And so Mr. Populist, I'm going to protect your jobs, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to look out for you and America first. And what's the only thing he passed? Giant corporate tax cut. Literally, his only accomplishment is an enormous tax cut to the
Well,
richest people in the country and
Operation Warp
giant corporations.
and Operation Warp Speed.
Yeah. And to be fair, Operation Warp Speed, right? Like we were fair to Biden earlier to give the nuance, we'll give the nuance there. Okay. And that doesn't help him with the right wing, but it's true that he did actually help push the vaccine forward in a positive way, although he did many other things wrong related to COVID. So at the end of the day, Fox News is mad at Trump because he's riled up the base so much that they now went from having the little bit of populism sprinkled
Right,
in as catnip to get them to vote for corporate interests,
right.
that they hate corporate interests so much that they might not vote for them anymore.
Yeah.
And Fox News is saying to it's the Frankenstein that it created. No, wait. Come back to corporate interests. Come back to corporate interests. You went too far. And Trump is a uniquely corrupt guy. Not because he's corrupt and no one else is. Of course not. Almost everyone in politics is corrupt. So no, Trump is only corrupt for himself. Whereas establishment Democrats and Republicans are corrupt on behalf of their donors. They're servants, they're waiters and busboys and waitresses who just serve their corporate donors whatever they need. Trump, on the other hand, only serves himself, but he gives the appearance of not serving the powerful, which is really alluring, not just to Republicans, but to a lot of independents, etc. And that's why he won in 2016. And that's why he's currently leading Biden today, despite his 1,000 insane scandals. But the Democrats cannot get it through their thick head because, unfortunately, they're brainwashed by mainstream media into thinking, no, we just support the corporate candidate and Americans will love corporations and they don't see those bribes at all. No, brothers and sisters, despite all of your overwhelming propaganda, we can all see the bribes.
Folks, the U.S. debt crisis could ignite a long-term rally in gold. Since March 2020, the U.S. has added $8 trillion in debt, and gold is up 50%. Now, with the Fed raising rates, the interest payment on our debt has surpassed $1 trillion a year. BRICS nations met last week, and oil-rich nations Saudi Arabia and the UAE have joined Russia, China, and India. And another credit rating agency, S&P, downgraded multiple U.S. banks on liquidity worries. 51% of Americans can't pay their credit card bills, which just surpassed $1 trillion for the first time ever. If this is Bidenomics, increased spending and regulation, it's only going to get worse. Buying gold and silver is a defensive strategy when you don't trust elected officials in Washington, D.C. to have your best interest at heart. So, what should you do? You should call the proud Americans of the Patriot Gold Group today before it's too late. Mention me, Michael Malice, and you'll always get best-in-class service from Patriots protecting Patriots. The Patriot Gold Group has the no-fee-for-life IRA, where your IRA or 401k can be in physical gold and silver, and you may be eligible for the no-fee-for-life IRA on qualifying rollovers. All you have to do is call 888-505-9845 to get a free investor guide, or even easier, go to malicegold.com. Patriot Gold Group is Consumer Affairs' top-rated gold IRA dealer 7 years in a row. So call 888-505-9845 or go to malicegold.com. Protect your assets against inflation today. Guys, if you know about me, you know I have a big green thumb. I love growing plants. It's a lot of fun. They didn't do so well here in Austin, and that's why I should have gone to fastgrowingtrees.com, because they've got thousands of easy-to-grow plants, shrubs, and trees, which are curated for your unique climate, environment, and needs. They've got Meyer lemons, they got evergreens, they got shade trees, and they've got everything in between. And you don't got to go to that big box store and haul that stuff around. With fastgrowingtrees.com, you order online. They arrive at your door in just a few days. You don't have a green thumb, that's fine. They're just a Zoom, chat, or phone call away. FastGrowingTrees.com plant experts are always available and eager to help, and they can walk you through your entire garden. And they've got specialized degrees and training to help troubleshoot from root to leaf. It's like telehealth for your plants. Join almost 2 million happy Fast Growing Trees customers. Go to fastgrowingtrees.com/welcome. Get 15% off your order, and you'll get a tree in the mail, just like I did. I got a cool chocolate mimosa, which did very well here in Austin. 15% off at fastgrowingtrees.com/welcome. Let's get back to the show. Well, but from your perspective, is that a good thing or a bad thing that Trump has turned the Republican base anti-corporate?
Another great question. So it's both. Okay.
Yeah.
Overall, the fact that he has kind of unmoored the Republican voters from the Republican establishment is actually a terrific thing. Okay. Now, the problem is he unmoored them and then took them in a fascist direction, which is a terrible thing. Like if he actually meant a word of what he said and he actually fought for the American worker, because of social issues or other things, I might vote against him anyway. But I'm not sure I would even consider him a net negative phenomenon, right? But right now, he unmoored them and went to, now, guys, we got to get rid of wind turbines because it's hurting my golf property in Scotland a little bit. And, we got to get rid of this and that because I got to let the Saudis dismember people and give $2 billion to my son-in-law because I'm getting rich off the golf tournament and my son-in-law is getting rich. So, but that doesn't help anyone. And so, and then when and to me, the number one concern with Trump, why he's unthinkable, is because of January 6th. I'm not, look, guys, again, not regular mainstream media kind of way of looking at January 6th. A lot of those schmucks really thought that the election was stolen, and they thought they were doing God's work. In their mind, Trump's
Yeah.
work, it's the same thing, right? But the guys who organized a fake elector scheme and actually had a 3-hour conversation about rolling out tanks against the American people and using martial law, and that concocted this thing to basically do a coup when they knew that they had lost the election and they had no evidence at all. No, that ends the country. And I'm not going to go for it. And I'm not going to encourage anyone to go in that direction. So, and that's the problem with when the right gets unmoored from the system, is that they often wind up in fascism. And we've got to pull them back. We got to pull them back. But there's no one pulling them back because the Democrats are so engrossed in their bribes that they can't look up from the trough. They're like, I'm eating Pfizer money and Lockheed Martin money. I can't look up and see what's happening.
I couldn't agree more, because I think you're speaking to a deep truth. I made this point. I was on Rogan once, and I said, if middle America starts putting up guillotines, corporate journalists will be tripping over themselves to make fun of how dull the blades are. It's like, you guys are playing with, I don't mean you, but I mean, you guys are playing with fire. When you were talking about the right wing and it gets unmoored from like basic civil norms, it's not the Tea Party and just someone waving a swastika flag. It's very violent, very authoritarian, and very scary. And the point I always make is violence sings its own song. So if you think it's just going to be something that's going to be easily put down, it's not. I mean, look, we're recording this on September 11th. It was a handful of people who, unleashed enormous devastation, both on the day and things that happened as a result of that, intentionally and otherwise. So I think it's a very dangerous game, this kind of sneering, because lefties historically have understood, when people are marginalized, whatever population, and they feel they've got nothing left to lose, well, you're really kind of giving them a blank check to do unspeakable things because there's no downside for them.
Well, again, it's worse than we even imagine. 41% of Republicans now say that it might be time for violence.
Right. Yeah.
41%. Not for like, hey, get rid of the filibuster, massive fundamental change, get rid of bribery. No, violence. And by the way, what's perhaps even more shocking about that poll is that a huge percentage of Democrats agree and independents agree. It's now that those numbers are now in the 30s. And I'm like, what is going on in this country?
Yeah.
And what's going on is torture. Corporate media is torturing us with gaslighting of there's no corruption. There's no corruption. Billions of dollars in bribes are not bribes.
Right.
And those people, even though they are voting exactly as their donors tell them,
they're just good citizens. The CEOs are good citizens who want to contribute to the conversation like you do and I do, right? Yes.
And so once they torture us with that gaslighting, people go, okay, then I'll lose my mind because I don't know what's true anymore. I know what's not true. What every anchor on television is saying is definitely not true. So then, okay, I'll take the first guy who shows up that has an alternative. Right. And Trump and Bernie showed up, and the media was able to bludgeon Bernie so that he couldn't win the Democratic nomination twice. So they're like, okay, I guess our populist choice is Trump. So we're going to go in that direction. And Trump's like, great, let's make me dictator. And that's how fascism comes. And then what did he do? Violence is okay. Second Amendment rights. Don't tread on me. You got to fight against government tyranny. Second Amendment rights. And Matt Gaetz did it, and Tucker Carlson did it, and they all did it. And it burned into people's minds is if you don't agree with the government, that means they're tyrannical. Go grab your gun and make sure that you do violence.
And from your perspective, don't you think literally, I'm going to say literally, all the trends are to exacerbating that direction?
Well, right. That's unfortunately, if it's not completely correct, it's awfully close.
I'm sure maybe there's one or two exceptions I'm not thinking of, but I mean, overwhelmingly, let's say.
But that's why, look, so at the end of my book, I get hopeful, and I'm going to give you the hope in a second. But first, before the hope, we're in the darkness before the light, right? And currently we are at the nadir of light. like there's almost no hope left.
That's not true. It could, come on, it could get a lot worse. Like, in all
No, it could
seriousness.
get worse if Trump wins and we just have flat out fascism.
Sure, yeah.
But I'm saying in my lifetime, in covering American government, it's never been worse than this. The corruption is 200%, and we're on the precipice of fascism, right? So now, and all the progressives have surrendered, and so to me, that's the worst part of all. And those progressives are surrendering, in my opinion, right before victory. They're snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. And so why do I think we're at potentially very close to victory? Because of demographics. And I don't mean racial demographics. I mean age demographics. The young are super progressive. They're going to vote with us. In fact, even in the 2020 election that Bernie lost in the primaries, in a state that he lost by a lot, 21 points in Michigan in 2020, he won under 45 vote by about 40 to 50 points. So everyone under 45 is basically a Bernie Sanders supporter. Okay. So, I mean, overwhelmingly, we're this close to winning the Democratic primaries. And right as we're this close to winning, they're like, no, we bow our heads to Biden. Biden is our commander, Lord Commander, and we will all do as he says. And we all endorse him like 17 years before the election. So now the audience is looking around and the voters are looking around going, God damn it, where's the hope? So at Young Turks and TYT, we're going to give them hope. We're going to fight back, and we don't give a damn what corporate media says. We don't give a damn what establishment Democrats say, Republicans say, or Trump fans say. No, we're going to give you hope. We're going to fight back, and we're going to win. And yes, I would love a stronger candidate in 2024 to represent the progressive position. And yes, I know corporate media will take their heads off, but that's what I'm asking for. I'm asking for courage, but I can't find any in Washington.
If one of the things I don't know if confused is the right word, but something I'm kind of shocked at is if someone is of the opinion that Trump returning to the White House might be an existential threat to America with all that entails, or at least a radical reinterpretation of the America that has existed for the last, whatever, 80 years, you would think that it's like, okay, this isn't a dress rehearsal. All hands on deck. This is the real thing. You know what I mean? We've been through it once, and now he's going to be, it's like, the trilogy. Now he's emboldened, right? And his base is more radicalized, more emboldened. To fight against him with this weekend at Bernie's like corpse is, to me, seems like almost downright immoral.
So political malpractice, and that's part of how I'm fighting back. Look, I'm going to ask you to go to a couple of links if you agree. Okay, one is tyt.com/dropout. That's the petition to push Biden out of the race.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So, and why? People say, well, Cenk, there's no, like, Marianne, God bless her heart, but she's not gathering enough momentum for to win. Whether you agree or disagree, that's fine. But like, there's no giant progressive that could replace him. So why are you trying to push him out? Because I don't want to lose to Trump. Like their mind is locked in from like MSNBC, New York Times, NPR brainwashing. Biden is the only one who can win. The corporate Democrat is the only one who can win. The incumbents must be supported. It is radical heresy not to support the incumbent Democrat. Bow your head, bow your head. And unfortunately, it totally works. Are you guys crazy? Biden is 15 points lower than when he eked out of electoral college victory in 2020. He barely won by 43,000 votes in 3 swing states. Please spare me your horse crap about the 7.5 million votes in popular. I know, but that's not the point. I know Biden is more popular. I know that Trump is very unpopular. That's not the point. The point is, are you going to win the election? And we do that based on the electoral college. And the guy who barely won last time, who is now 15 points lower and can barely get through a speech, is not going to win. I'm sorry. I'll do a self-aggrandizing analogy here. I feel like I'm Paul Revere, and I'm running, like galloping through the street saying, Trump is coming. Trump is coming. Don't put out this guy who could barely dress himself. If this is the most important election of our lifetimes and democracy is on the line, and I agree, it is. You're going to put up a wounded antelope as your candidate? And then people say, oh, yeah, this is their favorite trick in the world. Again, taught to them by the people in mainstream media. They drilled it into their head. Oh, yeah, name another candidate. Easy. Literally every Democratic governor would
Yeah,
be
that's
way better than
most of the senators.
yeah. Look, the senators have issues, and certainly a
Sure.
handful of them would be way better. But there's a dozen popular Democratic governors, and a bunch of them from like purple states
Yeah.
that we need to win. Why wouldn't you go with? Look, dude off the street, next guy that walks by my house, better than Biden. Okay. But a Democratic governor that's popular is definitely better than Biden. It's actually not even arguable. A lot of those governors are sitting at above 50%, right? Which is these days very hard to do,
Yes.
especially in purple states, right? Biden's at 39. Where's the question? No, the only reason that anyone thinks that Biden might be the better candidate, or that it's even a legitimate question, is because they have been programmed to believe
Yes.
that you must bow to authoritarian leaders. If it's a Democratic leader, a Democratic incumbent, you must bow. You must never challenge them. And I don't agree. I'm in open rebellion. tyt.com/dropout. Get them the hell out of the race. 1 million people sign that petition, and people are going to notice.
How concerned are you that, God forbid, something happens to President Biden and we have Officer Harris as the Democratic nominee?
Very concerned.
And that's not unlikely at all. I mean, I think this is a coin toss at this point.
Totally. Look,
and I think he'd wipe the floor with her, don't you?
Yeah. I mean, we've got the two most hobbled people in the Democratic Party as the leaders. And by the way, it's not an accident, guys. Why is it an accident? Isn't an accident? We interviewed Grover Norquist all the way back in 2004. We've been around forever at the Republican National Convention. And since he thought we were kind of irrelevant radio show at the time, he was actually extraordinarily honest. He's the head of Americans for Tax Reform. That's the biggest corporatist giveaway to the rich group in the world, right? Right wingers, etc. And we asked him back then, McCain was more popular than George Bush. He had a more storied career. He had higher popularity rankings, better media. But you guys listened to both of them, and you chose Bush over McCain. And that made a giant difference because Bush then got a lot more funding and he wound up winning. Why did you guys do that? And he said, because we asked both of them, are you going to listen to us or not? And John McCain said, well, I'm a maverick. Of course, I'm going to listen to you guys, but I'm going to make up my own mind, obviously. And Bush came in and said, yeah, what do you need? I don't have an opinion. What do you need?
You can't blame him for asking that question and going with the guy who said yes. You can't blame him.
That's it. And so Norquist basically admitted on our program, we went with a guy who said he would take our bribes and do as he was told. We went with a servant boy that George W. Bush was. By the way, now mainstream media, including MSNBC, loves Bush. Has Bush and Cheney people all over their network. Half their hosts work for Bush.
Does that surprise you, having these people who I would regard as war criminals, and not to mention the fact that gay baiting in 2004 with the state bills, to have them being valorized by people like Rachel Maddow? I would think there'd be a little bit of like, okay, like the enemy of my enemy is not always my friend. These are still horrible people, even though they're hating someone I hate.
No, look, since I'm very progressive and populist, people assume, oh, well, you're not very practical. Because again, media brainwashing, right? Sure. No, I'm enormously practical. So if Liz Cheney says, I'm going to vote with you on something that is important,
yeah,
I'm going to take yes for an answer.
Of
right?
course.
Yeah. If Liz Cheney makes a powerful case against Donald Trump on television, I appreciate that. That doesn't mean I'm going to vote for Liz Cheney. That doesn't mean I like Liz Cheney. And that doesn't mean I'm going to agree when she wants to start the next war. And it doesn't mean that when Dick Cheney goes to support her, that Nancy Pelosi should hug him and that MSNBC should sing his praises. And it also doesn't mean that you should hire Nicole Wallace, who was literally the mouthpiece for Bush and Cheney when they pushed for war, torture, warrantless wiretapping. And now all of a sudden she's our hero? No, she's not. No, she works for corporations, and that's what MSNBC loves. And they're sheep herding their entire audience to right-wing Democrats. But what they don't realize is a lot of those folks then become right-wingers instead of left-wingers. and instead of progressives. So I got no interest in them in heading in that direction. Matt Gaetz did an anti-corruption bill, and half of it, 3/4 of it, was pretty good. I would clean it up. Give me the 3/4 I agree with. I'll definitely vote for that bill. I'm a practical guy. I don't give a damn that Matt Gaetz or Liz Cheney and their names, etc. But if you ask me to lionize them in general and give them credit and say they're our new friends and allies overall, no, hard pass.
Because this isn't just about tax cuts or, school choice. This is about killing hundreds of thousands of innocent people. And if you want to be really a nationalist and be like, I don't care about killing people overseas, well, those kids grow up and sometimes they don't have a very positive opinion about you. And some of them are even, unfortunately, going to do something about it. So this kind of chain that, that people are just kind of sweeping on the rug, to me, is extremely disturbing and very dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely. So, look, Michael, my battle plan is TYT is now largest online network, right? My plan is to make TYT the largest media network, period. Because you're never going to convince the corporatists that run MSNBC that progressives are the better alternative for Democrats, that they shouldn't necessarily listen to Democratic incumbents, they shouldn't support corporate Democrats. They're not going to do any of that. They're going to keep doing exactly what they're doing now. Same thing for Fox News and CNN. And by the way, do you want to know why I'm saying to your audience? It's because they are the ultimate benefactors of the corruption.
Oh,
so, for example, in 2022, they spent a record-breaking, astounding $17 billion in those elections. And where did almost all of it go? To corporate media to buy ads. So you think corporate media is going to turn down $17 billion to support progressives because it's the right thing to do and they're the left-wing channel? No. They're going to accept and be super happy to be the beneficiaries of all of that corruption.
Senolytics are a class of ingredients discovered less than 10 years ago, and they're being called the biggest discovery of our time for promoting healthy aging and enhancing your physical prime. That's why I want to talk to you guys about Qualia Senolytic by Neurohacker. Our sponsor, Neurohacker, packs 7 of the most science-based senolytic ingredients into one formula called Qualia Senolytic. You could take it just 2 days a month for fast, noticeable benefits for a much better aging process. The formula is non-GMO, it's vegan, gluten-free, and the ingredients are meant to complement one another, factoring the combined effect of all ingredients together. It's also backed by a 100-day money-back guarantee. You have almost 3 months to try it, and then no financial risk, and you can decide for yourself. Go to neurohacker.com/malice for up to 50% off Qualia Senolytic. And as a listener of You're Welcome, use code malice at checkout for an extra 15% off your first purchase. That's neurohacker.com/malice to try Qualia Senolytic with code malice and start aging on your own terms. And I got to tell you, this is the kind of stuff that's big here in Austin, and I'm really plugged into that community, and I'm really excited to see what kind of stuff is coming down the pipe. Hey folks, Michael Malice here, tolerated author, Twitter asshole, and sheath underwear model. I love wearing sheath. I wear it every single day. They're the most comfortable briefs you'll ever wear. And I'm currently designing a new pair of sheath based on a certain type of fish, which you'll see in the coming months. Every time you hear my voice, you should know I'm wearing sheath. And what makes sheath different is that they have dual pouch technology. They have one pouch for one part of your male anatomy, another pouch for another part of your male anatomy. Sounds weird, but when you put them on, they're going to be super comfortable. They keep you cool in the hot weather, keep you nice and snug in an interview, on a date, doing a podcast, so on and so forth. After you tried sheath, you're never going back to the other brands. Support the underwear that supports you. Go to sheathunderwear.com, use promo code malice, you get 20% off. That's sheathunderwear.com, promo code MALICE, 20% off. They've got shirts, they've got hoodies, they've got mesh ones. They have something for you. They also have a girls line, but since women aren't allowed to listen to the show, I can't help you. Sheathunderwear.com, promo code malice. Let's get back to the show. One of the things I often say is that the corporate press doesn't have a bias; it has an agenda. I think it's probably inevitable that everyone has a bias. You're going to see things that validate your worldview and kind of sweep away things that don't. And I think that's part of human nature. But I always use, when I talk to lefties, I always use you as an example, because there was an incident that happened, which to me demonstrates very clearly that this isn't just mistakes. This is just people being stupid. This is brazen dishonesty. You had David Duke on your show many years ago, former Klansman, who had run for Senate in, I think, was it 88 or somewhere in the 90s, in the Republican primary, and lost. Hardcore anti-Semite, hardcore racist. This is his bread and butter. And at the end of the interview, he says, I'm not an anti-Semite. And you go, no, of course you're not. It's so, and the idea that you'd be platforming and agreeing with some big racist is just absurd given your history and your views. And when the New York Times discussed that interview, they quoted David Duke and they said, no, of course not, said the host, or whatever, how they refer to you. And it's literally impossible, literally, to watch that clip and not get that you're being sarcastic. There's no misunderstanding. It's not confusing. But then to see it in writing as if you were actually agreeing with it, taking out the sarcasm, to me was an example of a great, like, they want to destroy you. This cannot have been done accidentally or stupidly. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that whole exchange.
Yeah. So, Michael, there's three layers to that, right? So, first of all, corporate media has a corporate bias, but they do something extra, which is actually a genius trick. They say, no, our position is the objective one.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So our bias is built in to what is objective. And hence, if you disagree with us, you are by definition radical, and we are objective. That privileges their bias.
And also radical is bad. And that's just a given.
Yeah,
that's kind of a given.
That's right. That's right. So if you don't agree that corporations should rule everything, you're a lunatic. Ha 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 ha. You're totally illegitimate and not credible. It is like that should be studied in psychology classes and business classes for how to manipulate people for profit. It is amazing. And it is so much more subtle than right-wing media. Right-wing media is a blunt instrument. They just tell you lies that are super obvious. The mainstream media, they're brilliant at taking bias and lies and painting it as if it is objective and beautiful and truthful and honest, right? So now we get to the second layer of it. When they get to a point where, in that case, they were attacking me because they despise me because of all these things that I say. But more importantly, they were attacking Bernie Sanders. It was right before Super Tuesday, and Bernie had endorsed me, and they found it to be a perfect opportunity to smear him and me as sexist and racist and all these terrible words right before people voted on Super Tuesday. And so that's when they didn't have time for subtlety. They went with right-wing media strategy of just lie about him. Who cares? Just put it in the headline. Put it in the headline. Who cares? So your point, they had to retract that one because it was such an outrageous lie. In that interview with David Duke, I called him an anti-Semite, a racist, an idiot, a loser, etc. No one who watched that interview could possibly think that I was on David Duke's side. So when they wrote it like I was on David Duke's side and I wanted to share his anti-Semitic views with our audience, even other corporate journalists were like, guys, you're kind of giving away the game here. This is too much. You've done too much here. But it wasn't just that, Michael. Then they said that I was anti-Muslim. They never clarified that I'm Muslim, that I was born Muslim. I grew up Muslim. My whole family's Muslim. I'm atheist now, but you don't think it's relevant? You think I'm against my entire family and friends? I grew up in Turkey until I was 8 years old. You think I think the whole country is wrong and terrible? I mean, not mentioning that the person grew up Muslim when you claim the anti-Muslim, bigoted against Muslims. No, you're just saying, I'm lying. I'm lying. I want you to hate this guy. I want you to hate him, right? And the last one. I mean, look, this is an old joke that has been around in politics forever. Like, if you really want to smear someone, forget the sleeping with girls, forget the guys. Just say they're sleeping with farm animals, right? I think Lyndon Johnson had a line about it. They literally did it. They took a joke I made about a horse being pleasured on the show, and I say at the end, did the horse mind? Nay, right? And they go, yeah, he was being serious. It's part of his political agenda to legalize bestiality. Oh my God, you maniacal liars. Jesus Christ, have you no bounds? So that's when I was like, look, I've been talking against corporate media my whole life, right? But that's when I realized, no, they have no bounds. And this is not around the edges. And this is not.
And it could not have been an accident. This wasn't like, oops, I misunderstood him.
Yeah, no. So I hate to say it, and because it is so ripe for misinterpretation, but I will give you full context here. I love the idea of a free press. I love the idea of an objective press, and that's
Sure.
exactly what I want to get to. Okay, but the current corporate press is the biggest enemy of the people. And so I know Trump said it, so people catch feelings over it. And when he said it, he was actually he was lying more than they are. So it's terrible that I wish he had never said that, right? Because it unfortunately takes something that is true and stains it with his toxic Trumpness, right? But the reality is, what progressives are, as you'll see in chapter 1 of Justice is Coming, progressives are like 2/3 of the country. And guys, it's not hyperbole, it's not exaggeration. Every poll shows on almost every issue, 2/3 of the country agree with us, right? But how come we don't win elections? That's because the media is intent on absolutely destroying and keeping out progressives. They didn't even keep out Trump. They hated Bernie Sanders 10 times, 20 times more than they hated Trump. And so we've got to get past the corporate media, and they're a wall of propaganda. They are our number one opponent. If we get the minute we get past them, good night, Irene. They'll never be able to contain us. Okay.
One of the
And sorry, Michael, last thing, that's why I'm
okay, no,
saying
please.
I'm trying to make TYT the largest media company, because then at that point, I don't have to go through the rest of media. I could just tell people. And already we're at 400 to 500 million views a month, every month, but we got to get into the billions, because once we do, then we're directly talking to the American people. And how do we get so large? We started in my living room. We had nothing. We had nothing. The audience lifted us up. And so the more people find out, the more programs like ours get lifted up. And then eventually we could talk straight to the American people. And the minute they hear us, tons of right wingers come to hate watch us, and they go, wait a minute, these guys are actually saying things that are true, and even more true than Trump in their minds, right? So we got to just make all of our progressive shows larger than the mainstream media, then we win.
I was born in Ukraine, and you mentioned being from Turkey. I spent some time in Bodrum a few years ago, and I was shocked and delighted by how completely European and Western it was. It was, like any other kind of like Riviera town. And I was delighted by the warmth and the friendliness of the Turkish people. And I'm and I have a good friend who's from Turkey, more than one actually. A good buddy of mine became a Turkish citizen. And I am very disturbed by the direction in which Turkey has been going in the last, 10 or 15 years. This is also not by accident. This is a very long march to the institutions by design of radicalization, and undoing a lot of what Kemal Ataturk had done, a long time ago. I'm curious as to your thoughts, as an American now, what is going on back in the motherland?
Yeah. So look, I'm not an expert on the nitty gritty of Turkish politics,
Sure,
but
sure.
from the outside, it's relatively easy to tell what's happening, which is Erdogan is a Trump-like figure, except unlike Trump, he's smart, and that's much harder. I think there's like 6 guys at a minimum, no, 7, that are in that same bucket with varying intelligence and hence varying effectiveness. So you got Putin, Erdogan, Trump, Netanyahu, Duterte in the Philippines, Bolsonaro, luckily now out in Brazil, and Viktor Orban in Hungary. And so these are the neo-fascists that are all using the same tricks. What's the first group of people you're going to target? Religious people. Why? Because they have already said, we have given up logic and reason. We're acting only on faith. And who do we give faith to? Our religious leaders. Religious leaders are super easy to co opt because, on average, they're the most corrupt. So a politician goes to them and says, I'll make you guys more money and more power. They go tell everyone, you vote for the right winger. Right winger's definitely right. Yeah, Jesus wanted more war. Jesus hated the poor. Jesus loved the rich. They just lie, 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 lie. By the way, Bible is pro-abortion. Everything that you hear from religious leaders on the right is nothing but a lie. Numbers 5:11 through 31. I also put that in Justice is Coming. God is 100% in favor of abortion, and he commands that a priest perform one if he thinks the wife has cheated on her husband. So read your Bible. Your religious leaders are totally lying to you, and they've been lying to you your whole life. So, anyways, so they're all doing the same trick. Unfortunately, Erdogan's really good at it. He totally got the religious side of Turkey to go, fundamentalist side to go with him. And then he let in a bunch of Syrians and Afghans and then gave them citizenship. And so they all voted for him, and they're more fundamentalist Muslim. And he's taking what was a awesome secular country, and every single day he's making it darker, more corrupt, more fundamentalist, more irrational, and more geared to specifically supporting Erdogan's corruption.
Yeah, it's very disturbing to watch, and obviously there's very little either of us can do from the outside. But just seeing a country kind of, if you look at another example, if you look at pictures of Afghanistan in the 70s or Iran in the 70s, Andy Warhol in his diaries was complaining that the Shah, there was less caviar because the Shah's fortunes weren't doing so well. But that's how westernized Iran was. And then there's this idea of like, oh, this guy's terrible. We got to get rid of him. It can't get worse. It's like, people who always think, especially Americans, are like, it can't get worse. You guys have no idea how dark some of these nations can become and how really just evil. We've got a ways to go before things, get in a horrific direction. I'm curious your thoughts. There seems to be, from my perspective, and I want to hear your thoughts. There seems to be a big division within the Democratic Party elites about what to do with Trump. And it seems to me that there's one wing that's like, we got to make him the nominee because with all these indictments, there's no way he's going to get elected. And the other wing is like, this guy's corrupt and a criminal. We got to lock him up, throw away the key, and make an example out of him. Do you think that analysis is accurate?
Yeah, definitely accurate. And the wing that wants to make him the candidate, they're, in a lot of ways, they're traitors. Because they think it'll improve their chances by a couple of percentage points, but they're willing to play with fire.
Right.
They say that democracy's on the line and you're going to help Trump become the nominee. You people are disgusting. And so either you don't mean it at all, or you're totally okay with a higher percentage chance that this country falls into fascism because it helps your political chances by a couple of percentage points. That it doesn't get any more disgusting than that. I would, if it was up to me, I'd push a button right now and Trump disappears from politics. I don't want him. I don't care about the general election as long as it's not Trump. And so that's an overstatement. Of course, I care about it, but the number one thing that I care about is that we don't go down a fascist way, right? And now, if you notice, the Democrats are morphing that into, well, actually, all of the Republicans are fascist. No, wait a minute. Nikki Haley is not fascist. Nikki Haley is a corporate stooge, but she's not fascist. And I don't think Ron DeSantis is fascist. I think Ron DeSantis is a terrible guy, and I think he's demagogued, and I think he's hurt the LGBTQ community, etc. I can list you all of his transgressions, but I never noticed him trying to end an election or reverse an election or do a coup or end democracy. So let's not, because if you do hyperbole, then you become the boy who cried wolf, and they don't believe you.
And here's the other thing, which I always tell people: the story ends with the wolf showing up. So that's when you're talking about the boy who cries wolf, you keep crying wolf. He's going to show up at the end. That's how it ends, stupid.
Yeah, and by the way, right now, I mean, keep going with that analogy. The Nancy Pelosi's and the Joe Bidens of the world are inviting the wolf over to their house,
right. Yeah.
Because they think, oh, I got this. Do you? Because I don't remember you having it in 2016. And you brag all the time, you Democratic goons, about how you barely eked out a victory against Donald Trump, who's barely in the double digits in IQ, by the way. I mean, 6 bankruptcies, thinks that wind causes cancer. You might nuke a hurricane. Nuking a hurricane might be a good idea. The stealth fighter is actually invisible to the naked eye and is like Wonder Woman's jet. And that you should inject bleach into your body to cure COVID. And you guys are having infinite trouble beating that moron. And you think you got this? No, you've shown definitively you don't have this. Do not encourage Trump. Do not invite the devil to your house, because he might show up and he might be stronger than you think he is.
You're Welcome with Michael Malice is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Folks, most of you listening right now are probably multitasking. Yep, you're listening to me talk, but you're also driving, cleaning, exercising, maybe even grocery shopping. But if you're not in some kind of moving vehicle, there's something else you could be doing right now, which is getting an auto quote from Progressive Insurance. It's easy and you can save money by doing it right from your phone. Drivers who save by switching to Progressive save nearly $700 on average, and auto customers qualify for an average of 7 discounts. Discounts for having multiple vehicles on your policy, being a homeowner, and more. So just like your favorite podcast, Progressive will be with you 24/7, 365 days a year, so you're protected no matter what. Multitask right now. Quote your car insurance at Progressive.com to join the over 29 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $698 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2021 and May 2022. Potential savings will vary. Discounts not available in all states and situations.
Hey, whatever podcast you're listening to right now, guarantee it's not as good as
you can
Fighter
stop
and the
listening.
Kid.
Stop listening to it and listen to Fighter and the Kid.
We've only been doing it for 12 years.
Oh, geez, before anybody else was doing them.
Now everybody's copying us. It's so much fun. We cover sports, pop culture,
life, dude. In
Lizzo,
life in general, feet, fetishes.
Oh,
there's a lot of
man.
sex talk. There's a lot
we
of
know our stuff.
Yeah, you're not going to learn anything, but hopefully you'll laugh. You know what I'm saying? You might learn something.
Go subscribe to the Fighter and the Kid right now.
Immediately run, don't walk.
Let's get back to the show. What do you think now? I think you would probably agree that there's almost no possibility of having a MAGA majority in the House and the Senate, just for various reasons. Certainly, even if the Republicans won every single Senate seat in the 2024 election and Trump got in, it still wouldn't be anything close to a MAGA majority. But from your perspective, if you had Trump in the White House and magically there was a MAGA majority in both the House and the Senate, what do you think America would look like? What policies do you think they would implement?
No, but remember, Michael, you don't need a MAGA majority. Trump just needs credible threat of ending their careers if they vote.
Okay, sure. How about a working MAGA majority? Like, what do you think that would look like?
Yeah, I think they are going to have that. If Trump wins re-election, every Republican, no matter how corporate they are, will instantly bow their heads and listen to the alpha leader, and so Trump will get everything he wants this time around. And so what does it look like? Look, we fight Republicans for a living. I've been fighting them for 25 years on TYT, 21 on TYT, 25 overall. And I could fight Republicans. Doesn't matter. The demographic wave is on our side. We're almost definitely going to win in 2028. I just need the Republic to survive, right? But if MAGA wins, Trump wins, the number one thing I'm worried about is we're not going to have another election. So, or it's going to be wildly rigged. True. And it's going to be maniacal rules that make no sense, and they're just going to shove it right down your throat. He's going to start arresting political and media opponents. I would be very surprised if he didn't do that. It is going to be authoritarian in a way that is going to be absolutely shocking to the people in power. I mean, those idiots on TV, on cable, they still don't get it. They still think it's going to be, it's all right, but I'm going to keep my mansion and I'm going to get to send my kids to private school. Everything's going to be great. Don't worry about it. No, it's not going to be great. I would be very surprised if he didn't imprison opponents. So, and then the rest of it is, I mean, you want to go anti-LGBTQ. Of course they're going to do that. They're going to, and by the way, what are they proposing? Guys, the main thing they're going to do is give even more tax breaks to the rich and corporations. In fact, today, news came out that Trump's main proposal for 2024 is lower corporate taxes from 21%. Remember when he started, he was at 35%. He was successful in lowering it to 21%. Now he wants to lower it to 15% because corporations don't have enough of a break. And this is the populist candidate on the right. But right-wing media lies to their audience 24/7, so they actually think he's a populist when he's the exact opposite. So yes, corporations will get more, and hence, by the way, until as long as he's dangling that carrot in front of corporate world that I'm going to lower your taxes again. And it's actually politically smart for him to do that because now the corporate donors are going to start inching back towards his way. They're going to start funding the DeSantis's and the Chris Christie's less. They're going to start to power down their opposition against Trump because that their greed is going to kick in. And if Trump proposes that bill, they will be on Trump's side all the way until he passes that bill. All of a sudden, you'll start to see positive things about Trump in the media because those corporations love those yummy, delicious corporate tax cuts.
Well, I mean, just to be clear, like that lower taxes on corporations, obviously abolishing elections is extremely fascist or extremely authoritarian. But is that the worst that you think the domestic policy would be?
No, there'll be hateful policy against
Okay.
LGBTQ for sure, and there'll be hateful policy around the edges to Latinos, blacks, Muslims, Jews. But I don't think that's their main objective. I think that that's how they get votes.
Okay.
But like when and it's not like they don't do it. They've done it in tons of states. So don't take any chances, right? I'm not trying to minimize it. I just think their main thrust isn't hate. Hate is the tool they use. Their goal is greed.
What do you think of the recent attempted bill by the governor of New Mexico to have an emergency decree that carrying guns in, I think it was Albuquerque, is banned for 30 days in the wake of some public shootings?
So I don't know where gun control comes out in terms of populism, and you'd have to poll it. So when I say 2/3 of the country is on one side, I'm not saying it because they're on my side. I'm saying it based on the polling. I'm looking
Okay.
at facts and data, etc. So gun control is a complicated one because on things like universal background checks, it polls at 97%, and the whole country wants it, except our politicians. The banning automatic weapons is polls at about 2/3, so that's good, etc. But my positions are further left than where most Americans are. So hence the Albuquerque thing is perfectly great to me. I would do it more.
But I mean, are you not concerned with kind of what's good for the goose, what's good for the gander, that a Ron DeSantis or Governor Abbott will similarly look at some emergency, feigned or otherwise, and be like, all right, for the next 6 months, no abortions in this state, even from,
Oh, I see what you're
you see what
saying.
I'm saying?
Yeah, my bad, Michael. You're right. No, you have to do it through regular process.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the substance of what he's proposing, I agree with. But you're right. The method by which he did it is not correct. Because if you go down that path, totally right. The right-wing governors go, okay, there's no rules anymore. In fact, I'm worried about that right now. Not some with the governors, Republican governors, but a lot of conservative sheriffs now have this giant group of 3,000 sheriffs where they say, if we don't think it's constitutional, we're not going to enforce any of these laws. And that's very dangerous, because then you're going to have different guys with guns from the government at the local level, state level, and federal level pointing the guns at one another. And that's a disaster in the making.
What do you think of, you can look at them individually, all three, but there's a lot of talk online that Senator McConnell, Senator Feinstein, and Senator Fetterman should all resign, that they're not fit for office to varying degrees. What's your take on all those? And perhaps you want a McConnell in office because he's a hobbled leader as opposed to someone who's a strong, vigorous candidate.
No. So I never believe in these games with like, oh, I want the super evil person to be in office because I think I have a couple of percentage points better. No. Get them out. Mitch McConnell is the heart of darkness. I can't, like, on policy alone, I couldn't wait for him to get out of the Senate. Obviously, Democrats, being the enormously incompetent party that they are, could have no chance of defeating him in Kentucky.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, there's no way.
Right.
Yeah.
And so he has to voluntarily leave at some point. And so there's one exception I'm going to make here, which is Fetterman, because Fetterman's mind is perfectly okay. He's having trouble speaking. And that's one of the things that got affected in the stroke. But he understands you perfectly well, and he forms perfectly cogent thoughts. If I thought there was something wrong substantively with his mind, then I would put him in the same category, even though I think pre-stroke Fetterman was probably the best hope we had. I mean, he was an almost perfect populist progressive candidate. And so, man, what an unbelievable bad luck turn that he wound up having a stroke. But okay, but his mind is fine. Feinstein and McConnell, no question, get him out instantly. It's absurd. There is no Feinstein. She has full-blown dementia. She can't remember what she said a minute ago. Schumer has to keep repeating and repeating and repeating. All the senators are chipping in. And in reality, the person wheeling her around is Nancy Pelosi's daughter. Pelosi's controlling that seat. It's an absolute outrage that she's still in the Senate. And by the way, why is that? Because Gavin Newsom when he thought it wouldn't be relevant, promised that he would nominate an African-American woman to that seat if Feinstein stepped down. And the logical choice is Barbara Lee, who's a progressive. And since Gavin Newsom is a corporatist, he doesn't want to put a progressive in. He wants Adam Schiff to win. So he's like, no, I don't see it. I don't see a problem. Nancy Pelosi's doing, I mean, Feinstein's doing a great job in running that seat.
I think it's a funny visual, almost like Russian dolls, where you have Feinstein and then behind her is Pelosi, who's what, 80 something. I mean, she was shaking hands with JFK, and then there's going to be someone behind her, and it's just going to be this big stack of wheelchairs from here to San Francisco.
100%. And Mitch McConnell, who are you kidding? We saw with our own eyes you freeze for 30 seconds twice. Once like for 10 seconds, another one for nearly.
And that's
30
just in public. We don't know what's going on behind closed doors.
Yeah,
the odds are, right.
Sorry, Michael. You're 100% right. His staffers were totally nonplussed. They were like, oh, yeah, there he is freezing again. Okay, let's handle this situation. Because you know why? Because the actual politicians are irrelevant.
Yes.
They're just placeholders. Yeah. Whoever's in that seat is going to do exactly what the donors tell them to do. So it doesn't matter if their name is Feinstein or McConnell, their brain is functioning or their brain isn't functioning. The only issue is they don't want to get rid of McConnell on the Republican side because he's brought in $1 billion from donors, and they don't want to get rid of Feinstein on the Democratic side because Nancy Pelosi's running that seat. This is what corruption looks like.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts as a proud progressive when you saw Joe Biden. I think he was in Vietnam over the weekend, and he starts giving this rambling. I don't even know what point he was trying to make, and then you hear Karine Jean-Pierre over the loudspeaker go, "Okay, that's the end of the press conference. Everybody out!" And it's just like 1 second away from Mr. Burns being like, "Release the hounds, get out."
No, guys. I mean, look, all of Washington has turned into Weekend at Bernie's,
Yeah,
and there's a reason for that too. Because a new politician is a risky investment. The donor doesn't know what they're going to get for their money. Whereas with Biden and Pelosi and Feinstein and McConnell and every other Republican senator, they're super old because they bring in a good return on investment. They're a safe investment. So the donor goes, I know Pelosi, McConnell, and Biden have worked together to give me trillions of dollars in goodies. I don't know Joe Blow, and the progressive is against me. No way, right? Just give me a standard corporate robot and wheel them in. They're widgets anyway. Yeah. What difference does it make who's serving me? Okay, so that's why you have super old people running Washington. They're a perfect symbol of our corruption because they're just placeholders for corporations who do exactly what they are told.
I don't have an answer to this, and I'm extremely interested to hear your thoughts. Let's suppose through some mechanism, imprisonment, or he's knocked off the ballot, President Trump is effectively kept from being the Republican nominee in 2024. Not that he loses the primaries, but that he's kept from being given a shot. He's got a stranglehold on, I'd say, a good 40%. I think it's being conservative of the Republican base. What do you think will happen then? What do you think is going to be a new candidate that'll emerge? Where are those voters going to go?
Look, I think Trump should be kept from the ballot because he organized an actual coup attempt against America. On principle, I believe that he should definitely never be allowed to run for office again. I mean, it's like, honestly, it's like letting Mussolini run for office again. Like, oh, he'll behave this time. And you know the analogy I wanted to use. I just don't want to go trigger people because they're going to think it's extreme. But yeah, you don't let fascists run for office again. Because they're not going to play fair. They're not going to a lot of times the normies make the mistake of doing projection. Oh, Trump will think like I do. Like, no, he'll play fair. No, he's not going to play fair. He's going to end it. Okay. How many times does he have to praise dictators and say, oh, I love it when Kim Jong-un walks into a room and they all stand and applaud? Yeah, that's because he murders them if they don't. And Trump is both too stupid to understand that and doesn't mind. He's like, I'm down with it. I love people bowing down to me. So you get that clearly. Having said that, I really, really want him to lose in a regular process. Because if we ban him from office, however that happens, I will say yes to that. But I will then brace for impact because the right wing is going to be furious. And so will violence break out? Almost definitely. Who will they go to? It's hard to tell. I mean, they're not going to go to the cheesy corporate
Yeah.
way.
They're not going to Nikki Haley or Mike Pence.
Yeah. No way. I just talked to a Republican neighbor just a couple of days ago, and he's like, "Yeah, they're trying to make us pick Nikki Haley. We're not going to." Okay,
Yeah.
and so
Did
they
you see
know.
that? It was an article from The Hill that Nikki Haley's like spiking and she was at 7% now. It's like,
Yeah.
that's like the Green Party. Like, what are you talking about?
No, Michael, look, I can be even more clear. After we cover all the debates, so you can't broadcast the debate because they Fox News has
Right.
rights to it, etc. But we come on air at the Young Turks immediately after and give analysis. And you know what we said after that first debate? We said we think Vivek Ramaswamy won. Not that we like him. We don't
Yeah.
like him. We think he's cheesy, he's greasy, and we're going to break down all the things that he said wrong. Okay. But we think the Republican voters will like Vivek the most out of this debate. But we also added, but the media will say Nikki Haley won.
Right.
We predict stuff all the time because they're so predictable. They're so predictable.
Well, they're
And
not
so what do the media
sophisticated.
say right afterwards? Nikki Haley won. Nikki Haley won. You turn on MSNBC, Nikki Haley won. Fox News, Nikki Haley won. CNN, Nikki Haley won. Right? And they moved her numbers from 5 to 7%. Congratulations. But she didn't win, and she's not going to win.
The Republican base doesn't like Karen. When Nikki Haley had her finger in Vivek's face and was wagging it and scolding him, does not play to the Republican base at all. It does play to the boardroom at Fox and News Corps, but and maybe the New York Times, where they can appreciate that kind of thing. But in terms of New Hampshire and Iowa, you are crazy if you think this is what they want.
I'll tell you who can win on the Republican side, who could win a primary and who could win a general election and has like just a trace chance of even beating Trump in the primary. And that's Brian Kemp. So
Governor of Georgia. Okay.
Yeah. Because the reason for that is Brian Kemp is very strong and he stood up to Trump and then did better than Trump's candidates, crushed Trump's candidates in Georgia. And he knows how to make a very right-wing, but very strong message that appears populist. And don't get me wrong, again, I'm not at 1% in favor of Kemp. I'm just saying he's better at the art of deception than the other Republican politicians are, and he could make a real run.
The new book is called Justice is Coming, How Progressives Are Going to Take Over the Country and America is Going to Love It. I know you've been working at this for a very long time, so I hope it's a huge success for you. It's out now. Cenk, we're running out of time. What has been your favorite part of this interview?
Yeah, okay, I like that. So first, let me just say that you can order the book at tyt.com/justice, tyt.com/justice. Thank you. And my favorite part, other than you allowing the plug of the book, which I appreciate, is the fact that I was able to have a sane conversation, because I'm now going on all different shows, right wing to left wing to middle to corporate, you name it. I'm going on all the shows, right? And oftentimes you will run into someone that lives on a different planet. And so the fact that we live on the same planet and can at least agree to facts and logic, it's a breath of fresh air. So thank you.
You are welcome.